2 here, back with another episode of my Tardis tutorial. In this video we're going to be going over the Tardis speed feature so that you can change the speed of your flight. Now faster speeds will require more fuel, yet if you want to go a slower speed that will require less fuel. So if we come to the Tardis console, you can see there's this new control here. This is called the throttle, and this is what will allow us to control our speed. You can see now it's on the first tick, but if we set it to the second one, it'll say that our flight speed has been set to 1 minute. We click it again, 1 minute 30 seconds, click it again, 2 minutes, and finally 30 seconds. So let's say we wanted to set that to 30 seconds, and we wanted to dematerialize. Let's see what happens. Tardis dematerializes. You can see there's this new progress bar counting down from 600. And while this is above 0, if we come here and try to rematerialize, our Tardis flight is incomplete and it won't allow us to rematerialize. Now those 600 ticks do correspond to 30 seconds, so that is what we need to wait before we can rematerialize. And now you'll see what happens when this timer reaches 0. You can see it gives us a little sound and it says Tardis ready to materialize. And if we click the materialization lever now, it'll work. So if we wanted to dematerialize again, but this time we wanted to use a different speed, we would just come over here and we could set it to 2 minutes if we wanted, just to the opposite extreme. And I will let you take note of the amount of energy consumed by our flight. Quite a bit, honestly, a lot more than usual, and that's because the higher speed you want to go, the more energy it will take. So a 2-minute flight is not going to take hardly any energy at all. So let's do that. You can see now that we've dematerialized, our ticks are now at 2400, and now we need to wait for that to go down, and that corresponds obviously to 2 minutes. So yeah, this is quite a long flight. However, our energy is going to be going down a lot slower, and that is the trade-off. Faster flights, more speed, slower flights, and that is the trade-off. Faster speeds equals more energy, and slower speeds equals less energy. So how does this all work? Well, we want to come down to our materialization room, and we want to add on a new section right back here. So what we want to do first is make a scoreboard, and it's going to be scoreboard objectives. The objective doesn't actually matter as long as it's a dummy, but then you want to add a player to that. Scoreboard players add, and you want to call it Vortex Flight as such, and then you want to add it to whatever you want to add. I put it to Encyclers, and you want to just give them however many you want to give them. It doesn't really matter as of yet, just make sure that a scoreboard of some sort and a player called Vortex Flight exist as such. And what you want to do is set up this first. So this is a repeat always active command block, and it says that execute if the block right here, the lever, is powered off. The lever corresponds to the demat lever, so make sure that that lever is off. If it is off, meaning if the player attempts to rematerialize, and if the score of Vortex Flight in Cyclers matches more than 1, so this is what it's going to set to once we dematerialize. The Vortex Flight player is the score that you saw on the bottom of the screen when we dematerialized. And if that is above 1, then it is going to be constantly running the command run set block at the same coordinates, the lever which is powered equals true. And then these are optional: face floor, facing equals east. That'll be different depending on your Tardis, but when you try to rematerialize when the Vortex Flight is not finished, it will set the lever back to true, and it'll say Tardis flight incomplete via a chain, conditional, and always active command block. And of course, as always with those, you want to make sure that the arrows are facing the same direction. So as for the throttle control itself, you obviously want to place a repeater on the console, and you want to make sure you know its coordinates. And then you want to come over here, and you want to get some repeat and always active command blocks. You want to do execute if score Tardis energy matches 50 or more, and that's obviously just making it only able to change the throttle when the Tardis has a certain amount of energy. You don't have to do that, but you can if you would like. But you do want to do this if the block at those coordinates, those are the coordinates of your repeater. You want to make sure whether that repeater is on a delay of 1, and if so, you want to run the command scoreboard player set velocity controls 1, Now the controls objective and the velocity fake player are another thing you want to create, and that's exactly the same as any other scoreboard, just make it called controls, and then add a fake player called velocity. And when you set your repeater to a delay of 1, it will set that score to 1 as well. And you want to do likewise with other scores like 3 all the way up to 4 and 2. And then if that is successful, run a comparator which says flight speed set to whatever speed you want to correspond with whichever. So I made 1 correspond with 30 seconds, 2 corresponds with 1 minute, and so on and so forth. So what are these actually going to do? Well, that is where these command blocks come in, and what you want to do is do execute if entity at e name equals Tardis dmat. So if the Tardis is dematerialized, and if that score of velocity matches 4, so this is for the 2 minutes one, what you want to do is put a repeater and a command block, and this one will say scoreboard player set vortex flight cyclers 2400. In ticks, 600 ticks corresponds to 30 seconds, so 4 times that would be 2 minutes, which is 2400 ticks. So this will correspond to 2 minutes. And obviously if it's above 1 and we're dematerialized, then we will be unable to rematerialize. And you want to do the same thing with your other scores. So 3 would be 1 minute 30 seconds, so that's 1800. 2 would be 1200, and 1, which is 30 seconds, would be 600. So obviously you can set these now, and obviously if it's above 0, then you won't be able to materialize. Now how do we make it go down so that it can actually get to 0? Well, that's over here in this command block, which is another repeat always active. And what it's doing is execute if entity at e name equals Tardis dmat. If score vortex flight cyclers matches 1 or more, run scoreboard players remove vortex flight cyclers 1. So basically, until it gets to 0, as long as the Tardis is dematerialized, it's going to be removing 1 from that score once every 20 seconds. So yeah, that's how your score goes down. And we also have here this little thing where if the Tardis energy score matches 0, then it will set your vortex flight score to 0, so that if you get depleted of all your energy while you're in flight, it'll automatically set that to 0 to avoid any problems and just get you materialized. And finally over here, this controls our little indicator bar at the bottom. So execute if Tardis dmat. We're going to run title at a action bar, and that just means put it down here at the bottom of the screen. You want to open square brackets, then open curly brackets, then in quotations you want to write text, colon, then in quotations, flight progress, colon, and a space, and then comma, and then you want to do color, colon, blue, both in quotation marks. And then you want to close that curly bracket, comma, open another curly bracket. I know it's kind of a lot, but the title command can be somewhat confusing, so just bear with me. And then you want to do score, colon, and then for this one you want to put another curly bracket, and inside that you want to specify your objective, and in this case it's the cycler's objective, and the name of the player and within it is going to be specified, and that is of course vortex flight. So we're grabbing the score of vortex flight and putting it into that action bar title. And lastly, you want to close both those curly brackets and then open a new set which has the text which says ticks remaining with a space in front of it. And that hopefully should give you your little action bar at the bottom telling you how long you have left in your flight. And if you wanted the little indicator telling you when the Tardis is ready to rematerialize, what you'd do is get another repeat always active command block, and you would type execute if entity at e name equals Tardis dmat, if score vortex flight cyclers matches 0. So once the score goes down to 0, you're going to do a comparator, a little repeater just for a delay, and then you're going to have a impulse and needs redstone command block, and you're going to type execute if entity at e name equals Tardis dmat, if score vortex flight cyclers matches 0, run say Tardis ready to materialize. And if you want, you could also add in a sound effect as such. As for how speed affects the power drain of the Tardis, we can come in here, and what you want to do is have a new scoreboard, which is going to be speed drain, and you want to have 3 fake players called flight, 1 minute 30 flight, and 1 minute flight. Now 1 minute 30 flight and 1 minute flight, you want to set their scores to 20, and then flight you will just leave as is, and we will add scores to that using this command block. And this one is just doing scoreboard players add flight speed drain 1 via repeat and always active. Now to create those 3 fake players, you would just do scoreboard objectives add speed drain dummy in order to make the scoreboard itself, and then to add the fake players you would just do scoreboard players add flight speed drain, and then you would just set that to 1, 0. It doesn't really matter for flight, but it does matter for 1 minute 30 flight and 1 minute flight. You want to set those to 20. Now to get those to actually do something, you would want to come over here and make something like this with a repeat always active command block and a chain conditional always active command block, of course with the arrows facing into one another like this. And what you want to do is have in this first one execute if entity at e name equals Tardis demat, so if the Tardis is dematerialized, and if score velocity controls matches 2, so in this case that would be for a 1 minute flight, and if score flight speed drain is greater than or equal to 1 minute flight speed drain. So if the flight is greater than or equal to 1 minute flight, which in this case is 20, so if it's greater than or equal to 20 basically. And if so, we're going to run scoreboard player set flight speed drain 0. So of course flight is being brought up by this command block over here, and once it reaches 20, it'll set it back to 0. And then it'll just repeat that process over and over again. And what is that doing? Well, every time it does reach that number and set it back to 0, it's going to run this command block. And this one does scoreboard players remove Tardis energy 10. So every 20 ticks, which equates to 1 second, the Tardis is losing 10 energy when the Tardis is at a 1 minute long flight. Now for the 1 minute 30 flight, it's the exact same process, except with obviously testing for when it reaches 1 minute 30 flight. And that's just so that you can change these numbers to whatever you like, just to provide some flexibility. But obviously it's the same number, it's 20 for this one as well. But then this command block is changed to removing 5 energy. So if you're having a longer flight, which is 1 minute 30 seconds, it's going to remove about half as much energy as this does. So about 5 energy per second, and this one is 10 energy per second. Now for the 30-second flight, it's a little bit different in that you're going to have a repeat command block, a comparator, and another repeat command block. This one is on needs redstone, so the comparator can power it. But in this one, it's of course always active, and what you want to say is execute if entity at e name equals Tardis demat. So if the Tardis is dematerialized, and if the score of the velocity controls is 1, meaning 30 seconds, then what you want is for this to turn on and power this, and this is doing scoreboard players remove Tardis energy 1. So although it's only removing 1, it is doing so via a repeating command block for as long as you are in dematerialized with a speed of 30 seconds, basically meaning it's removing 1 every single tick, meaning it's removing like 20 per second. So this energy loss is about twice as long as this one, which in turn is twice as long as this one. And when you're at a 2-minute flight, I didn't make it do anything because I figured that it would be a fairly slow energy loss. So that's just the normal energy loss as in the energy video. And finally, let's just demonstrate the speed drain one last time. So we have our speed set to 30 seconds. And if we dematerialize, you can see we have 600 ticks in this flight. That equates to 30 seconds, and as you can see, while we're in flight, we cannot rematerialize until that reaches 0. And now that it has reached 0, we can rematerialize. And if we wanted to set it to a greater speed, we can do that. Dematerialize, you can see we now have 1700 ticks remaining. And of course, we can change speed while we're in mid-flight, so if we wanted to make this longer or make it shorter, we can do that and set it to say 30 seconds. But yeah, that's really all there is to it. This has been my video on a speed control for the Tardis. I hope you all enjoyed. I've been Tivo2. Be sure to subscribe, to follow my Instagram, Tebow2it, to follow my Twitter, which is also Tebow2it, to join my Discord, and lastly, to have a nice day. Goodbye.